She was pregnant and working when her billionaire ex walked in with new girlfriend in just one word. The private dining room fell completely silent. Jason Gutierrez stood frozen by the window, his $3,000 suit suddenly feeling like paper against his skin. His eyes were locked on the woman who had just walked through the service door carrying a dessert tray. But it was not her face that had stolen every word from his mouth. It was the unmistakable curve of her belly beneath her chef whites. 7 months pregnant. Maybe 8. The kind of pregnant that left no room for doubt about what had happened. Cynthia. His voice came out broken, barely above a whisper. What are you doing here? She set the dessert tray down on the table with steady hands that betrayed nothing of the earthquake happening inside her chest. Working. I am the head pastry chef. Have been for 3 months. Across the table, Valentina shifted in her seat, her designer dress rustling against the leather chair. The model's sharp eyes moved between Jason and this pregnant chef, calculating, assessing, understanding that her romantic anniversary dinner had just become something else entirely. You are. Jason could not finish the sentence. His gaze dropped to her belly and then rose back to her face, doing mathematics that were 7 months too late. Pregnant. Cynthia supplied the word he could not seem to say. Yes. 7 months. It happens when you have unprotected sex with someone who then changes their phone number. The words landed like bullets in the expensive silence of the room. Valentina's intake of breath was sharp enough to cut glass. Jason. The model's voice carried an edge that suggested she already knew the answer to her question. Is there something you want to tell me? But Jason was not looking at Valentina. He was staring at Cynthia with an expression that combined shock, grief, and something that looked dangerously close to hope. His mouth opened and closed twice before he managed to speak. One word. Yours. It hung in the air between them. A question that was also an accusation. A hope disguised as doubt. As if there was any possibility that the child growing inside her belonged to anyone other than the man who had walked away without looking back. Cynthia met his eyes for the first time since entering the room. She saw the shadows beneath them, the way his hands gripped the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. She saw the desperate hope flickering beneath his carefully constructed exterior. And she gave him her answer. One word to match his. Yours. In every way that matters, including biologically. The chocolate souffle in its copper ramekin chose that moment to reach its peak, golden and trembling and absolutely temporary. By the time Valentina pushed back from the table with a sharp "I think I need some air," it was already beginning to fall. But I am getting ahead of myself. To understand how 3 lives collided in that private dining room, how one word could carry the weight of 7 months of silence and 6 years of dreams, we need to go back to the beginning. Back to a kitchen that smelled like chaos and creation. Back to the moment everything started. And trust me when I tell you this. What happened between Cynthia and Jason will make you question everything you think you know about love, betrayal, and whether people who have shattered your heart deserve a second chance to hold it again. Let me take you there. The kitchen at Magnolia and Vine operated like a symphony conducted by controlled explosions. Steam billowed from copper pots in calculated bursts. Knives struck marble cutting boards in rhythms that separated professionals from amateurs. Chefs in white coats moved around each other like dancers who had memorized choreography written in fire and urgency. At the pastry station near the back, Cynthia Reyes worked with hands that had learned steadiness through 7 months of proving everyone wrong. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun. Her chef white stretched across a belly that seemed to grow more insistent by the day. Her feet ached in sensible shoes that had replaced the heels she used to wear when she believed her life would look different than this. 7 months pregnant and still working the line. Not because she wanted to prove anything to anyone, but because stopping was not an option. Not when she had a baby coming and exactly zero safety net to catch her if she fell. The wedding cake in front of her required concentration she was struggling to find. For tiers of vanilla bean perfection waiting for the delicate rosettes that would transform it from impressive to extraordinary. The bride had requested something that looked like a garden in spring. Cynthia had designed something that looked like hope made edible. She piped another rosette, watching it bloom from her pastry bag with the precision of muscle memory. This cake would cost more than her monthly rent. The couple would cut it surrounded by 300 guests who would never know that the woman who created it had assembled her own baby furniture alone at midnight, crying into instruction manuals written in 4 languages. That was fine. That was the job. Creating beautiful things for other people's celebrations while your own life fell somewhere between functional and surviving. Order up for table 12. The expediter's voice cut through the kitchen noise. Cynthia kept working on her rosettes, the call not directed at her station. VIP section. The Gutierrez party. Her hand stopped moving. The rosette beneath her piping tip collapsed into something that looked more like a wounded flower than a careful creation. She must have misheard. The universe could not possibly be that cruel. Did you say Gutierrez? Her voice came out strangled, foreign to her own ears. The expediter did not even look up from his tickets. Jason Gutierrez. The tech guy. He has got the whole private room. Apparently it is some kind of anniversary dinner. Him and his new girlfriend. She is that model. Valentina something. Anniversary dinner. New girlfriend. Private room. The words arranged themselves in Cynthia's mind like a cruel poem written specifically to destroy her. She set down her piping bag with hands that had started to tremble and placed one palm flat against her belly. The baby kicked once, hard, as if protesting the irony of a universe that would bring her father to this exact restaurant on this exact night. I need 5 minutes. Cynthia heard herself say the words but did not remember deciding to speak them. You get 2. That wedding cake needs to be ready by 7 and we are already behind on the Mercer table and the souffle for 12 needs to be started in the next 10 minutes because apparently Mr. Billionaire specifically requested tableside preparation. I said I need 5 minutes. She did not wait for permission. She walked through the kitchen's back door and into the alley where they stored recycling bins and broken dreams. The October air hit her face like cold water, sharp and clarifying in the way that only almost freezing temperatures could be. Jason Gutierrez was here. In her restaurant. With another woman. While she carried his child in a body that no longer felt like her own. She pressed her back against the brick wall and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. The same pattern she had learned in the birthing classes she attended alone because the father of her child had changed his phone number 7 months ago and never looked back. Think, Cynthia. Think. She could hide. Stay in the kitchen for the rest of service and send someone else to handle the VIP room. The soup pastry chef was out sick, but there were other people who could prepare a tableside souffle. She could avoid the private dining room entirely, finish the wedding cake, clock out, and drive home to her apartment where she would eat leftover pasta and pretend this night never happened. Or she could walk into that private dining room with her head held high and her apron stretched over 7 months of evidence that some things could not be erased just because a billionaire decided they were inconvenient. She thought about the woman she had been 7 months ago. Hopeful. Trusting. Stupid enough to believe that love meant something to a man who had built an empire on the certainty of his own judgment. That woman would have hidden. Would have protected herself from the confrontation. Would have chosen safety over dignity. But that woman had been destroyed the night Jason Cross walked out of her apartment with his back to her because he could not bear to see her face while he ended everything they had built together. The woman who remained was different. Harder. Complete unto herself in ways that came from surviving things that should have broken her entirely. She chose pride. She always chose pride now. It was the only thing she had left that did not cost money. Cynthia straightened her chef whites, adjusted the apron that did very little to hide her condition, and walked back into the kitchen. The chaos swallowed her immediately. Orders being called. Pans clattering. The organized madness of a Friday night service in full swing. She moved to her station, checked the souffle ingredients that had been prepped by the morning crew, and assembled her presentation tray with movements so practiced they required no thought. Which was good, because every thought she had was screaming. The walk from the kitchen to the private dining room took approximately 47 seconds. Cynthia knew this because she counted every step, using the numbers to keep herself grounded in reality instead of floating away on the tide of panic that threatened to drown her. 17 steps through the kitchen. Past the grill station where Marcus was cursing at a steak that had the audacity to cook unevenly. Past the salad prep where 2 line cooks were having a whispered argument about someone named Derek. Past the expediter who gave her a look that said you better not mess up this ticket. 12 steps down the service corridor. Walls lined with black and white photographs of the restaurant in various stages of existence. The original owner in 1952. The renovation in 1987. The current iteration under Chef Morrison's vision. 18 steps through the secondary dining area. Tables full of people who had no idea their lives were about to serve as backdrop for a confrontation 7 months in the making. The private dining room door was heavy oak with brass fixtures. Cynthia had served dozens of parties in this room over the past 3 months. Birthdays. Business dinners. Engagement celebrations. She knew exactly how the door would feel when she pushed it open. Knew the slight resistance, the way it swung silently on well-oiled hinges. But she had never stood on this side of the door knowing that on the other side sat the man who had broken her in ways she was still discovering. Her hand found the brass handle. She pushed. The private dining room at Magnolia and Vine was designed to impress. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, buildings lit up like earthbound constellations against the October darkness. The table seated 12 but tonight held only 2. Candles flickered in crystal holders, casting warm shadows across faces that Cynthia knew she would never forget as long as she lived. Jason Gutierrez sat with his back partially to the door. He had aged in the 7 months since she had seen him last, though aged was not quite the right word. Settled, perhaps. Or maybe just tired. His dark hair showed the same slight wave she remembered running her fingers through on lazy Sunday mornings. His shoulders beneath his obviously expensive suit held tension she could see from across the room. The woman across from him was exactly the kind of beautiful that made normal people feel inadequate. Sharp cheekbones that caught the candlelight. Designer dress that probably cost more than Cynthia's car. Posture that suggested years of professional training in how to be looked at. They were laughing about something when Cynthia pushed through the door. The sound of it hit her like a physical blow. Not because Jason was laughing, but because he was laughing the way he used to laugh with her. Genuine. Unguarded. Present. She had forgotten he could sound like that. The laughter died in his throat the moment he turned and saw her. Time did something strange in that moment. It stretched and compressed simultaneously, giving Cynthia an eternity to watch his expression transform while also making everything happen too fast to process. Recognition first. Then confusion. Then comprehension as his eyes dropped to her belly and understanding dawned like a sunrise he had never expected to see. She set the dessert tray down on the service station at the edge of the table. Her hands were steady. She had practiced being steady for 7 months. Had learned that falling apart was a luxury she could not afford when she had a baby depending on her to hold everything together. Your chocolate souffle. She addressed the space between them rather than either face. Made tableside. I will be preparing it now. That was when he said her name. That was when everything that followed became inevitable. Cynthia. She had imagined hearing him say her name thousands of times over the past 7 months. In dreams that left her angry upon waking. In fantasies where she told him exactly what she thought of his cowardice. In nightmares where he apologized and she discovered she had no idea how to respond. None of those imaginings had prepared her for the reality. His voice broke on the second syllable, cracking open like something that had been held together too long under too much pressure. What are you doing here? Working. I am the head pastry chef. Have been for 3 months. You are. His eyes went to her belly again. She watched him do the mathematics. Watched the numbers add up in his mind with all the precision of someone who had built a tech empire on the certainty of calculated outcomes. Pregnant. She supplied the word he could not seem to find. Yes. 7 months. It happens when you have unprotected sex with someone who then changes their phone number. The cruelty of the statement was intentional. She wanted it to land. Wanted him to feel even a fraction of what she had felt standing in her apartment with a positive pregnancy test in one hand and a phone that would not connect in the other. Across the table, Valentina was no longer pretending not to notice that something was happening. The model's eyes had sharpened into something predatory and assessing. Jason. Her voice carried the edge of someone who suspected the answer to her question would ruin her evening. Is there something you want to tell me? But Jason was not looking at his girlfriend. He was staring at Cynthia with an expression that combined shock and grief and something that looked dangerously close to hope. His mouth opened and closed twice before he managed to speak. Yours. One word. A question and an accusation wrapped in 2 syllables that carried the weight of everything he had thrown away. As if there was any possibility. As if she had been running around getting pregnant by multiple billionaires. As if 7 months ago she had been anything other than completely and devastatingly in love with him. Cynthia met his eyes. Let him see the woman she had become. The one who had built herself from the rubble of his abandonment. The one who had learned that survival was not just possible but mandatory. The one who would not be destroyed by his reappearance in her life. Yours. She confirmed. In every way that matters, including biologically. The chocolate souffle in its copper ramekin chose that exact moment to reach its peak. Golden brown perfection trembling at the height of its architectural achievement. A temporary masterpiece that would begin its inevitable collapse the moment she stopped paying attention to it. Just like everything else in this room. Valentina pushed back from the table with the sharp scrape of chair legs against hardwood. I think I need some air. She gathered her clutch and stood with the kind of grace that came from walking runways in impossible shoes. Her eyes swept over Cynthia with an assessment that was half contempt and half something that might have been sympathy. Jason. We will discuss this later. She was gone before he could respond. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving Cynthia alone in the private dining room with the man who had fathered her child and then vanished from her life as if 7 months of love had meant nothing at all. The souffle continued its slow collapse. Neither of them noticed. Now let me pause here for just a moment because we have reached a turning point in this story. Cynthia is standing in that private dining room with her belly full of Jason's child, looking at the man who abandoned her without knowing what he left behind. And I need to ask you something. Have you ever had someone from your past walk back into your life at the worst possible moment? Have you ever stood face to face with someone who shattered you and had to decide in real time whether you were going to break down or stand tall? If this story is hitting close to home, I need you to hit that like button right now. And drop a comment below telling me what you think Cynthia should do. Should she hear him out? Should she walk away and protect herself? Does someone who disappeared without a word deserve the chance to explain? Because what happened in the 7 months before this moment, how these two people went from being in love to being strangers, that story is going to change everything you think you know about betrayal and survival. But first, let me tell you about the night it all fell apart. 7 months earlier, Cynthia's world existed in the space between dreams and reality. She worked as a sous chef at a tiny bistro called Rosemary and Thyme in downtown Portland. The kind of place that seated 40 people on a good night and attracted food critics who appreciated technique over trend. She ran the pastry program, which was a fancy way of saying she arrived at 5 in the morning to bake croissants and left at midnight after creating desserts that people photographed more than they ate. The pay was terrible. The hours were worse. But every night when she plated something beautiful, when she watched diners close their eyes at the first bite, she remembered why she had chosen this life. Creation. Connection. The ability to turn flour and butter and sugar into moments that people would remember years after the taste faded. She was 28 years old. Single by choice after a string of relationships that had taught her more about what she did not want than what she did. Living in a studio apartment that she loved despite the water stains on the ceiling. Saving money for the restaurant she would open someday, even if someday felt very far away. That was her life on the night Jason Gutierrez walked into Rosemary and Thyme looking for something he could not name. She noticed him immediately. Not because of his clothes, though his casual sweater probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. Not because of his watch, though it caught the candlelight in ways that suggested serious money. She noticed him because of the way he stood in the doorway scanning the room like he was not sure he belonged there. Rich people usually carried their wealth like armor. They moved through spaces with the assumption that the world would rearrange itself around their presence. But this man stood like someone who had forgotten how to be comfortable anywhere. One of the servers seated him at a corner table. Cynthia watched from the pass window as he declined the wine list and ordered sparkling water instead. As he studied the menu with the kind of attention most people reserved for legal documents. As he sat alone in a restaurant designed for connection and somehow made solitude look like a choice rather than a sentence. Her shift should have kept her in the kitchen. Pastry chefs rarely interacted with diners directly, especially at a place like Rosemary and Thyme where front of house and back of house maintained strict separation. But when the dessert course came up for his table, something made her carry it out herself. He looked up when she approached. Dark eyes that held a particular kind of exhaustion. The kind that came from building empires and discovering that the view from the top was lonelier than anyone had warned. The chocolate lavender tart. She set the plate down in front of him. House-made. The lavender is from a farm in the Willamette Valley. I would recommend eating it slowly. The flavors develop as it warms on your tongue. Did you make this? His voice was quieter than she expected. Less polished. The kind of voice that suggested the expensive exterior was wrapping something more interesting than mere wealth. I did. He studied the tart like it was a puzzle to be solved. Then he picked up his fork and took a careful bite. She watched his expression transform. The exhaustion remained, but something else joined it. Something like wonder. It tastes like something someone loved making. He looked up at her. You can tell the difference. Between food that is technically perfect and food that someone actually cared about creating. Most people cannot tell the difference. Most people are not paying attention. He smiled then, and she felt something shift in her chest. A small rearrangement of expectations. An opening of possibility that had been sealed shut after her last relationship ended in mutual acknowledgement that they wanted different things from life. Can you sit down? He gestured to the empty chair across from him. I know you are probably working, but I would love to know more about how you created this. I really should not. Please. There was something in the word that went beyond politeness. A genuine desire for connection that felt out of place coming from a man who looked like he could buy the entire block. I have been in meetings all day with people who only tell me what they think I want to hear. I would very much like to talk to someone who creates things instead of just consumes them. Against every instinct she had developed in years of service industry work, Cynthia sat down. They talked for 2 hours. About food first, because that was safe territory. About the chemistry of baking and why croissants required exactly the right humidity. About flavor profiles and the mathematics of recipe development. About her dream of opening her own place someday, small and focused and exactly what she wanted instead of what investors thought would be profitable. He listened like everything she said mattered. Asked questions that showed he was actually processing her answers instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. Leaned in when she described the feeling of pulling a perfect loaf from the oven, as if he understood exactly what she meant about the satisfaction of creation. "What do you do?" she finally asked. "And I do not mean that as a status question. I am genuinely curious what creates the kind of tired I can see in your face." He laughed. The sound was rusty, like something he had not done in a while. "I build things. Software mostly. Systems that connect people. I started a company in my garage 12 years ago and now it employs 4,000 people across 7 countries." He paused. "That is the resume version. What is the real version?" "The real version is that I spent 12 years chasing a goal and when I caught it, I discovered the chase was more fulfilling than the achievement. The real version is that I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes and I still ate dinner alone tonight because I do not know how to be a person outside of being a founder. The real version is that your chocolate lavender tart is the first thing that has made me feel something in months, and I am not sure if that is beautiful or pathetic. Why not both? Why not both indeed?" He paid his bill and left a tip that was larger than most people's car payments. But before he walked out, he paused at her station near the kitchen door. "I would very much like to see you again. Under circumstances that do not involve you working." His voice was careful, as if he expected rejection. "I realize that is forward. I realize you probably have a policy about customers. But I have learned that the things worth having usually require asking for them directly." She should have said no. Every professional instinct told her to maintain the boundary between service provider and customer. But there was something in his eyes that looked like hope, and she had forgotten how beautiful hope could be when it was genuine. She gave him her phone number. That was the beginning. The moment that set everything else in motion. If she had said no, if she had maintained professional distance, if she had trusted her instincts about rich men and their temporary enthusiasms, everything would have been different. But she said yes. And for 3 months, yes felt like exactly the right answer. They fell into each other the way people do when the connection is real and the timing is right. Coffee the next afternoon became dinner 2 days later became spending the weekend at his penthouse watching the city lights and talking about everything and nothing. He was different than she expected. The money was there, obviously, enormous and overwhelming in ways she tried not to think about too deeply. But beneath the wealth was a person who genuinely wanted to understand things. Who asked her to teach him to cook because he had spent 12 years eating restaurant meals and takeout containers. Who stood beside her in his state-of-the-art kitchen getting flour on his expensive shirt and laughing at his own mistakes. "I am terrible at this." He looked at the misshapen lump that was supposed to be pasta dough. "How do you make it look so easy?" 10 years of practice. She took his hands in hers and guided them through the kneading motion. "You are treating it like a problem to solve. Dough is not a problem. It is a relationship. You have to feel what it needs. I am not very good at relationships. You are doing fine with this one." He kissed her then, flour on both their faces, laughter still in his throat. It was the first kiss that felt like home. 3 weeks in, they were inseparable. 3 months in, she let herself believe in forever. The penthouse had a rooftop garden that Jason had never used before she came into his life. It was designed by some famous landscape architect and maintained by a service that came twice a week, but he had never actually spent time there. Too busy. Too distracted. Too focused on the next meeting and the next acquisition and the next milestone that would finally make him feel like he had done enough. But with Cynthia, he discovered the garden. They would climb up there after dinner, wrap themselves in blankets against the evening chill, and watch the stars that were barely visible through the city's light pollution. This is where their daughter was conceived. Under a moon that hung full and golden over a city that never slept. In a moment that felt like it would last forever because how could something this real ever end? "I love you." Jason said the words into her hair, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "I know it is too soon. I know we barely know each other. But I have built systems that connect millions of people, and I have never felt as connected to another person as I feel to you right now." Cynthia turned in his arms to face him. Saw the vulnerability beneath his carefully constructed confidence. Saw the boy who had built an empire to prove he was worthy of love, only to discover that empires could not love you back. "I love you too." The words felt like jumping off a cliff. Trusting the water below to catch her. Believing that this time, finally, she had found someone who would stay. He promised her forever that night. Whispered it against her skin in the dawnlight that painted his bedroom gold. And she believed him because she wanted to believe him. Because belief was the only way love worked. But even then, even in the middle of all that certainty, there were signs. Moments of disconnection she chose not to examine too closely. Times when he would disappear into his phone for hours, apologizing afterward for the distraction but never quite explaining what pulled him away. Conferences that ran longer than scheduled. Meetings that required his physical presence in other cities with increasing frequency. She explained it all away. He was a billionaire. He had responsibilities. The fact that he made time for her at all was proof of his commitment. The fact that he always came back was what mattered. She was still explaining things away on the morning she took the pregnancy test. The 2 pink lines appeared with a certainty that left no room for doubt. She sat on the edge of her bathtub in her tiny apartment, staring at the result that had just rearranged her entire future. A baby. Their baby. Terror came first. She was 28 years old with a sous chef salary and a studio apartment and a dream of opening her own restaurant that was still years away from reality. She was not ready for a baby. Had not planned for a baby. Had always imagined children as something that would happen later, after she had built the life she wanted. But beneath the terror was something else. Something that felt like hope. Because she loved Jason. And Jason loved her. And yes, this was not the plan, but maybe the best things in life were the ones you did not plan for. Maybe this baby was exactly the thing that would transform their relationship from incredible to permanent. She spent the morning imagining how to tell him. Considered elaborate reveals and simple statements and everything in between. Settled finally on just telling him that night over dinner in his penthouse. She would cook something special. He would open wine that he would end up drinking alone once she shared the news. And then they would figure out together what came next. It was going to be okay. Better than okay. It was going to be the beginning of everything. She never got the chance to cook that dinner. Jason showed up at her apartment at 4 in the afternoon. She knew something was wrong the moment she opened the door. His face had closed off in a way she had never seen. His body carried tension that radiated wrongness. We need to talk. He did not meet her eyes. Can I come in? She stepped aside to let him enter. Watched him walk to her window and stare out at the view he had once described as charming. His back was to her now. He could not seem to turn around. I cannot do this. The words landed like stones in still water. Sending ripples in every direction. Cannot do what? Her voice was steady even though her heart was cracking. This. Us. He still would not turn around. We are from different worlds, Cynthia. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life. Not someone who is on 3 continents in a single week. Not someone whose every relationship becomes tabloid fodder. I never asked for normal. She heard the desperation creeping into her voice and hated herself for it. I asked for you. Then you asked for the wrong thing. He finally turned to face her. And that was worse than his back. Because his eyes were empty. Decided. Whatever internal struggle had led him to this moment, it was over. He had made his choice. Jason, please. Whatever is happening, we can figure it out together. That is what people do when they love each other. I am not capable of giving you what you need. I thought I was, but I was wrong. You need stability. Consistency. Someone who will be there every day without fail. That is not who I am. That is not who I have ever been. You promised me forever. I know. His voice broke slightly on the words. I should not have. I wanted it to be true. I convinced myself it could be true. But I have known myself for 34 years and I know what I am capable of. Maintaining what we have will only hurt you more in the long run. So you are what? Protecting me. By destroying me. He flinched. But he did not change course. I am sorry. I am so sorry. You deserve better than this. Better than me. He walked past her toward the door. She should have told him. Should have grabbed his arm and showed him the pregnancy test that was still sitting on her bathroom sink. Should have made him understand that this was not just about the 2 of them anymore. But something in his finality silenced her. Some instinct that knew he had already closed the door that words could not reopen. He was gone before she could decide whether to speak. The door clicked shut. The apartment went quiet. And Cynthia stood in the wreckage of her life with one hand pressed against her belly and the other holding the memory of a future that had just been stolen from her. She tried to call him that night. And the next morning. And every day for a week. His number had been changed. She tried his office. Polite assistants informed her that Mr. Gutierrez was not accepting personal communications. They offered to take a message. She left 17 of them. Not one was returned. She tried his email. Automated responses informed her that he was traveling and would respond to important communications upon his return. Her emails apparently did not qualify as important. The message was clear. Whatever they had been, it was over. Jason Gutierrez had decided she was no longer part of his life, and he had the resources to make that decision absolute. She was alone. Pregnant. Abandoned by the man who had promised her forever 3 months earlier. And she had to figure out how to survive. Now I need you to stay with me here because this is the part of the story where most people would break. Where most people would give up or give in or let the devastation become their entire identity. But Cynthia was not most people. And what she built in the 7 months that followed is why this story exists at all. Before I tell you about her transformation, I need you to do something for me. If you are invested in Cynthia's story, if you need to know whether she made it through and whether Jason deserves any chance at redemption, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications. Because what happens next will test everything you think you know about survival and second chances. And trust me when I tell you this. The woman who confronted Jason in that private dining room was not the same woman he walked away from 7 months earlier. She had been remade. And the remaking nearly destroyed her first. The first 2 weeks after Jason left were the worst. Cynthia moved through her life like a ghost inhabiting her own body. She went to work because not going to work would mean not paying rent, but she could not remember afterward what she had made or who she had talked to. She came home to her empty apartment and stared at walls that had witnessed her happiness and now witnessed something much darker. The pregnancy felt like a cruel joke. Evidence of love that had been declared worthless. A future growing inside her that she would have to face entirely alone. She considered every option. Sat with each one and felt their weight and imagined the life that would follow each choice. And in the end, she chose the option that terrified her most. She would keep the baby. She would raise it alone. She would build a life that did not need Jason Gutierrez or his billions or his empty promises. She would survive because survival was the only acceptable alternative to destruction. The decision did not make anything easier. But it gave her something to fight for. Someone other than herself to protect. She quit Rosemary in time. Not because she wanted to leave but because seeing the table where they had met, walking past the spot where he had first made her feel seen, was destroying her ability to function. She needed distance. Physical and emotional and complete. She found the job at Magnolia and Vine through a former colleague who had heard they needed a pastry chef. The commute was longer and the hours were worse and the kitchen ran hotter than any place she had worked before. But it was new. Unknown. Free from the ghosts of what she had lost. She told no one about the pregnancy until she had to. Hid it beneath loose clothing and careful positioning until her body made hiding impossible. When her new colleagues finally noticed, she deflected questions with vague references to a complicated situation and a determination to handle things on her own. She built walls. Not metaphorical ones but actual internal architecture. Compartments where she stored the grief and the anger and the betrayal. Sections of herself that she closed off and sealed shut because feeling everything would have paralyzed her. She learned to be alone. Not just single but entirely self-sufficient. She assembled baby furniture by herself. She attended birthing classes solo, learning breathing techniques surrounded by couples who held hands and whispered encouragements to each other. She painted her tiny nursery corner at midnight, crying into the can of soft yellow paint that had been on sale at the hardware store. The person she became was different from the person Jason had left. Harder in ways that protected her. Colder in ways that kept her functional. Complete unto herself in ways that felt like both victory and loss. She did not need anyone. Could not afford to need anyone. Needing people was how you got hurt. So she stopped. And somewhere in the middle of all that stopping, she found something that looked like survival. Not happiness. Not even contentment. But the ability to wake up each morning and move forward into a day that would not destroy her. It was enough. It had to be enough. That was the woman who walked into the private dining room at Magnolia and Vine on an October evening. The woman who set down a dessert tray in front of the man who had broken her and did not break again. The woman who heard him ask yours with hope in his voice and answered with a certainty that came from 7 months of becoming someone who did not need his hope or anyone else's. Yours. One word. carrying 7 months of survival. And now, standing in the aftermath of the Suffol's collapse and Valentina's exit, she had to decide what came next. The rest of the dinner service passed in a blur. Cynthia finished her shift through sheer force of will, ignoring the whispers in the kitchen and the concerned looks from colleagues who had witnessed something they did not fully understand. She did not return to the private dining room. Let someone else handle whatever remained of Jason's anniversary disaster. She had said what needed to be said. The rest was his problem. But when she walked out to the parking lot at 11:15 that night, coat wrapped around a belly that no longer fit into any of her regular clothes, he was waiting. Of course he was. "We need to talk." His voice came from the shadows near her car. He stepped into the light and she saw him clearly for the first time since the confrontation. He looked wrecked. Tie loosened. Hair disheveled. Eyes red in ways that suggested he had been crying. "Good. Now you want to talk." Cynthia kept walking toward her ancient Honda. 7 months ago talking was not an option. Answering your phone was not an option. Responding to a single one of my messages was not an option. I know. You changed your number. I know. You had your assistants block me. I know. She reached her car and turned to face him, using the Honda like a barrier between them. Why? Why did I block you, or why am I here now? Both. Either. I do not care. She was surprised to find that she meant it. I stopped needing answers from you months ago. I stopped needing anything from you at all. He absorbed this like a blow. Deserved it. She could see in his face that he knew he deserved it. I changed my number because I was weak. His voice was raw. Because every time I saw your name, I wanted to come back. And coming back was not. I did not think I could give you what you deserved. What I deserved was a partner who did not make decisions about my life without consulting me. What I deserved was the chance to tell you I was pregnant before you disappeared into your fortress of silence. What I deserve now is to go home, put my feet up, and eat the leftover pasta in my fridge without having this conversation in a parking lot at 11 at night. You are right. The agreement surprised her. She had expected arguments. Justifications. The kind of defensive response that wealthy men typically deployed when confronted with their failures. You are right about all of it. His voice cracked. I was a coward. I told myself I was protecting you from my life. The scrutiny. The chaos. The constant demands. But really I was protecting myself from the possibility of losing you. Which I did anyway. Just on my terms instead of yours. How noble. It was not noble at all. It was selfish and cruel and the worst mistake I have ever made. When I saw you tonight, when I saw that you were. That we are going to have. A baby. She supplied the word he could not seem to say. We are going to have a baby. I am going to have a baby. You lost the wee privilege when you decided our relationship was not worth a phone call. The parking lot lights cast harsh shadows across both their faces. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm went off and then stopped. The city continued its nighttime operations around them, completely indifferent to the drama unfolding in this small corner of concrete and consequences. Can I earn it back? The question stopped her. It was not what she expected. Not grand promises or defensive explanations. Just a raw, humble request that sounded nothing like the confident man who had built a billion-dollar company on the certainty of his own vision. I do not know. She said it honestly because she was done pretending. I do not know if I am capable of trusting you again. I do not know if I want to try. That is fair. He nodded slowly. What would it take? For you to consider trying. Cynthia thought about all the nights she had spent alone in her apartment. Talking to a baby who could not hear her yet. Making plans that included exactly one adult. Training herself to stop imagining him beside her because imagining made the absence sharper. Time. She finally said. Actions, not words. Proof that you are capable of showing up when things are hard and not just when they are convenient. She paused. And an explanation about Valentina. Because I will not be anyone's secret or anyone's second choice. Not ever again. Valentina was never what you think. Jason ran a hand through his hair. That familiar gesture that made her chest ache despite everything. We have been dating for 2 months. It has been superficial. Easy. Nothing like what we had. Tonight was supposed to be me trying to move forward. Trying to convince myself that I could have something uncomplicated. He laughed bitterly. The universe apparently disagreed. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. The universe sent me to the exact restaurant where you work. On the exact night you were covering pastry service. 7 months into a pregnancy I knew nothing about. Maybe it is not cruel. Maybe it is giving me the chance I was too stupid to take myself. She wanted to argue. Wanted to list all the reasons he did not deserve a chance. All the ways he had hurt her. All the nights she had cried herself to sleep wondering what she had done wrong. But she also thought about the baby. Their baby. The little girl growing inside her who would eventually ask about her father. Who deserved to know where she came from. Who might benefit from having access to that part of her identity, even if it cost Cynthia more than she wanted to pay. One chance. The words came out before she could stop them. Not with me. I am not ready for that. But with the baby. Our baby. If you want to be a father, you show up. Consistently. Even when it is hard. Even when it conflicts with your schedule or your work or your comfortable life. You show up anyway. I will. Do not promise me things tonight. Promise me things in 6 months when you have actually done them. She unlocked her car. I have a doctor's appointment on Thursday at 10 in the morning. Northwestern Women's Clinic. If you are serious about this, be there. She drove away without looking back. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Behind her, in the rearview mirror, Jason stood under the parking lot lights looking lost in a way she had never seen before. A billionaire who had suddenly realized that all his money could not buy the thing he wanted most. And that is where we are going to pause this part of the story. Because what happens next, whether Jason shows up on Thursday, whether he can prove himself worthy of the chance Cynthia has given him, that is going to take us somewhere neither of them expected. Cynthia has drawn her line in the sand. Set her terms. Demanded proof instead of promises. But here is what she does not know yet. Here is what she could not have predicted. Jason Gutierrez was about to spend the next 6 months becoming someone she never imagined he could be. And the transformation was going to force her to confront something far more terrifying than his abandonment. The possibility that he might actually deserve a second chance. We will find out together what happens next. But first I need to know what you think. Drop a comment right now telling me whether you would have given Jason even that one chance. Whether showing up for a doctor's appointment is enough to start rebuilding trust. Whether some betrayals are simply too deep to forgive. Your opinion matters. This community we are building here on Mr. Dawson Stories is about real conversations about real human experiences. About love and loss and the messy work of figuring out whether broken things can ever truly be fixed. So tell me what you think. And stay with me. Because the proving has only just begun. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of gray Portland sky that could not decide whether it wanted to rain or simply threaten. Cynthia sat in the waiting room of Northwestern Women's Clinic at 9:30 in the morning, her hands folded over her belly in a gesture that had become automatic over the past 7 months. She had arrived early because arriving early meant she could watch the door. Could see him walk in or not walk in. Could prepare herself for whichever reality materialized. The waiting room was designed for comfort. Soft chairs in muted colors. Magazines about pregnancy and parenting scattered across end tables. A water dispenser that made gentle bubbling sounds. Other women in various stages of pregnancy sat around her, most of them accompanied by partners who held their hands or rubbed their backs or did all the small things that partners were supposed to do. Cynthia was alone. As she had been for every appointment over the past 7 months. The staff knew her by now. Knew not to ask about the father or make assumptions about her support system. Knew to schedule her appointments early so she could get to work on time afterward. She checked her phone. 9:45. No messages from Jason. No indication that he was coming or not coming or even remembered the conversation they had in the parking lot 3 days ago. Maybe he had already moved on. Maybe her terms had been too harsh and he had decided the effort was not worth it. Maybe the shock of seeing her pregnant had faded and he had returned to his comfortable life with Valentina and his billions and his ability to make problems disappear by throwing money at them. 9:50. Still nothing. A couple walked in. The woman was maybe 6 months along, her belly perfectly round beneath a designer maternity dress. The man beside her carried her purse and her water bottle and looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Cynthia looked away. 9:55. She should have known better. Should have protected herself against hoping. Should have maintained the walls she had spent 7 months building instead of leaving a crack where disappointment could slip through. The door opened. Jason Gutierrez walked in looking like he had slept in his clothes. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair stood up at angles that suggested he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. His eyes found her immediately, relief flooding his face when he saw her sitting there. He was carrying 2 cups of coffee. one of which he immediately set aside upon seeing her condition. I did not know what time you got here. He was slightly breathless. I have been in the parking lot since 8, working up the nerve to come in. You have been here for 2 hours. I did not want to be late. It was such a small thing. 2 hours in a parking lot. Sitting in his car watching the clock and gathering courage. But it was also everything. Proof that he took this seriously. That her boundaries mattered. That his fear of rejection was secondary to his commitment to showing up. The coffee was presumptuous. She said it because she was not ready to be soft yet. Because showing up once did not erase 7 months of absence. The coffee was hopeful. He sat down 2 chairs away from her, giving her space. Is it okay that I am here? Before she could answer, the nurse appeared in the doorway. Cynthia Reyes. She stood, one hand supporting her lower back in the way that had become necessary over the past few weeks. Jason stood too, uncertain, waiting for permission to follow. Come on. She said it without looking at him. You came all this way. You might as well see what you missed. The ultrasound room was small and dim. Designed for intimacy that felt entirely too intimate, with Jason sitting in the chair beside her, his eyes fixed on the monitor like it held the secrets of the universe. The technician was a middle-aged woman named Barbara who had done every one of Cynthia's ultrasounds since she started coming here. Barbara looked at Jason with the kind of assessment that suggested she was deciding whether he deserved to be in this room. Whatever she saw apparently passed some internal test because she did not ask him to leave. Okay mama, let us take a look at your little one. Barbara applied the gel to Cynthia's exposed belly and positioned the wand. We are checking growth today, making sure everything is progressing the way it should. The screen came to life with grayscale shapes that slowly resolved into something recognizable. A head. A spine. Tiny fingers that seemed to be reaching for something beyond the boundaries of the image. There is your baby. Barbara pointed at the screen. Strong heartbeat. Good size. Everything looking exactly the way we want to see at 30 weeks. Jason made a sound beside her. Not quite a gasp. Not quite a sob. Something in between that suggested he was seeing his child for the first time, and the reality was hitting him harder than he had anticipated. Is it? He had to clear his throat. Is everything okay with her? With them? I mean. Her. Barbara corrected gently. You are having a girl. Did you not know? Cynthia shook her head. I wanted to wait. To find out when it felt right. And now? Barbara looked between them with the patience of someone who had witnessed countless complicated family dynamics in this small dim room. Cynthia looked at Jason. Despite everything. Despite the months of silence and the betrayal and the rebuilding. This moment felt like one they should share. Like something that belonged to both of them regardless of what had happened between them. Yes. She said. We would like to know. Well then. Barbara smiled. Congratulations. You are having a healthy baby girl. The sound Jason made this time was definitely a sob. He did not try to hide it. Did not turn away or compose himself. He just sat there with tears running down his face, staring at the screen where his daughter moved in grayscale, thumb near her mouth like she was already developing habits. A girl. He whispered. We are having a girl. We. There it was again. That word that implied partnership. Shared responsibility. A future built together instead of separately. She is beautiful. Cynthia said. And meant it. She is perfect. Barbara printed several copies of the ultrasound images. Gave them to Cynthia in a small envelope. Offered congratulations again and discreetly excused herself to give them a moment alone. The silence in the room was different than it had been. Softer. Full of possibility that Cynthia was not sure she was ready to acknowledge. Thank you. Jason finally said. For letting me be here. For giving me this. Do not thank me yet. She swung her legs off the examination table and began reassembling her clothing. This is one appointment. One moment. Trust is not rebuilt in single moments. I know. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. I know I have years of proving to do. I know this does not erase anything. But Cynthia. He paused until she looked at him. I want you to know that I will be here. For every appointment. Every milestone. Everything. I will not miss any more than I already have. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that the emotion in his voice was genuine and lasting. But she had believed him before. Had trusted before. And look where that had gotten her. We will see. She said it neutrally. Actions not words. Remember. Actions not words. He repeated. I remember. They walked out of the clinic together. The gray sky had decided on rain after all, a light drizzle that coated everything in moisture. Jason walked her to her car even though she did not ask him to. Stood in the rain without complaint while she unlocked the door. Can I buy you breakfast? He asked. Or lunch. Whatever meal this qualifies as. I would like to talk more. About logistics. Expectations. Whatever you need to discuss. She should have said no. Should have maintained the distance that kept her safe. But she was hungry and tired and something in her wanted to see what he would say when there was no medical procedure to distract from the conversation. There is a coffee shop 2 blocks east. She named a place she had been to before. Nothing fancy. Good food. I will meet you there in 10 minutes. She drove separately even though it was only 2 blocks. Because maintaining separate transportation meant maintaining the ability to leave whenever she wanted. Because trust was rebuilt in increments and she was not ready to be trapped in a car with him yet. The coffee shop was the kind of place Portland did well. Reclaimed wood tables. Local art on the walls. Baristas with creative facial hair and strong opinions about bean origins. Jason looked slightly out of place in his expensive clothes among the students and remote workers populating the space. They ordered at the counter. She got decaf and a breakfast sandwich. He got black coffee and nothing else, claiming he was not hungry even though she suspected he was too nervous to eat. They found a table in the corner. Away from other patrons. Private enough for the conversation that needed to happen. So. Cynthia unwrapped her sandwich. What do you want to know? Everything. He leaned forward. How you have been. How the pregnancy has gone. What I have missed. What you need. What the baby needs. Everything. That is a lot of ground to cover. I have time. However much you are willing to give me. She took a bite of her sandwich. Chewed. Swallowed. Made him wait because making him wait felt like a small reclamation of power. The pregnancy has been relatively uncomplicated. She finally said. Morning sickness in the first trimester that made working difficult. Some back pain that started in the second trimester and has not stopped since. Normal things according to my doctor. You have been working through all of this. Working is how I pay rent. Working is how I will pay for childcare once she is born. So yes. I have been working through all of this. He absorbed the implicit criticism without defense. What about support? He asked carefully. Do you have people who help you? I have colleagues who have become friends. There is a woman named Elena who works the line with me. She has been through this herself. Single mother with 2 kids. She has been showing me the ropes. But no family. My mother died when I was 19. Cynthia said it flatly. My father lives in Arizona with his new wife and has made it clear that my life choices are not his problem. So no. No family. I did not know about your mother. There is a lot you do not know about me. We were together for 3 months, Jason. That is not enough time to learn everything about a person. That is barely enough time to learn anything real. He nodded slowly. Accepting the truth of this. Then tell me. He said. Tell me everything. The real things. The important things. I want to know who you actually are. Not just who you were when we were trying to impress each other. She studied him across the table. Looking for signs that this was performance. That he was saying what he thought she wanted to hear. But his expression held nothing but genuine interest. The kind of attention that had first drawn her to him in that restaurant 7 months ago. Why does it matter? She asked. If you want to be a father to this baby, you do not need to know my childhood trauma or my mother's death or any of the things that made me who I am. Because being a father means being part of a family. Even if that family does not look traditional. Even if you and I never become anything more than co-parents. I want to understand the world my daughter is being born into. I want to know the woman who will be raising her. I want to be able to answer her questions someday about who her mother is and what shaped her. It was the right answer. The exact right answer. And that made her suspicious. You are very good at saying the right things. I know. He smiled slightly. It is how I built a company. Saying what people need to hear. But Cynthia, I am not trying to sell you anything right now. I am trying to understand. If that takes months or years, I will keep asking questions until you believe me. She finished her sandwich in silence. Thinking. Processing. Deciding how much to give him. My mother was a pastry chef. She finally said. That is where I got it from. She ran a small bakery in southeast Portland. Made wedding cakes and birthday cakes and cookies for every occasion. I grew up in that kitchen. Learned to cream butter before I learned to ride a bike. What happened to the bakery? Sold after she died. The medical bills were enormous. Cancer does not care about small business savings accounts. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Be present. She met his eyes. That is what I need from you. Not sympathy for things you cannot change. Presence for things you can. Okay. He nodded. Presence. I can do that. She laid out the terms then. The framework for his involvement that she had been constructing in her mind since the parking lot conversation. No unsupervised access at first. He would need to prove himself trustworthy before she left him alone with their daughter. Consistency over grand gestures. Showing up for small things mattered more than expensive gifts. Her primary parental rights were non-negotiable. She would be the custodial parent. His access would be earned based on demonstrated reliability. He accepted everything without argument. Made notes in his phone when she specified appointment schedules and expectations. Asked clarifying questions when he did not understand something. Treated the conversation like a business meeting in the best possible way. Taking it seriously. Treating it as something that required his full attention. One more thing. She said at the end. If you commit to this, you commit completely. You do not get to decide 6 months from now that fatherhood is inconvenient. You do not get to let her down the way you let me down. I will not. You said things like that before. I know. He held her gaze. And I proved that my words were worthless. So I am not going to try to convince you with words anymore. I am going to show you. Day by day. Week by week. Until you believe me or until you tell me to stop. And if I tell you to stop. Then I stop. He said it quietly. Your boundaries are absolute. If at any point you decide this is not working, that I am making things worse instead of better, you tell me and I walk away. I will still support the baby financially. But I will not force my presence on either of you. She had not expected that. Had expected him to fight for access. To threaten legal action or leverage his resources. The willingness to walk away if she asked was either the most manipulative thing he had ever said or the most genuine. She decided to find out which. Thursday appointment next week. Same time. Same place. Be there. I will be there. She left him with the check and walked out into the rain that had intensified while they talked. Her mind was full of questions she could not answer yet. Her heart was full of feelings she was not ready to examine. But somewhere beneath the uncertainty, something that felt dangerously close to hope had taken root. The next Thursday, Jason was in the parking lot at 8 again. And the Thursday after that. And every Thursday for the next 2 months. He showed up for every appointment without fail. Arrived early. Stayed late when she needed to ask the doctor additional questions. Took notes on his phone about vitamins and milestones and warning signs to watch for. He did not push for more than she offered. Did not ask to see her outside of appointments. Did not suggest dinner or coffee or any of the social interactions that might blur the lines she had drawn. But something was shifting anyway. Not in the dramatic way of romantic movies. In the slower way of accumulated evidence. Each appointment that he attended was a brick in a foundation she had not planned to build. Each time he showed up when he said he would, a small piece of her skepticism eroded. Elena noticed the change first. You are softer. She said one night after service, watching Cynthia wipe down her station with less than her usual intensity. Less armored. I am tired. Cynthia deflected. Being 8 months pregnant while working full-time is exhausting. That is not what I am seeing. Elena leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I am seeing someone who is starting to hope. Which scares you? I do not know what you are talking about. The baby daddy. He is showing up. He is showing up for appointments. That is all. For 2 months straight. Every single time. Elena raised an eyebrow. That is not nothing. It is not everything either. No. Elena agreed. But it is a start. And starts are scary when someone has already proven they can hurt you. Cynthia did not respond. Could not find words for the complicated tangle of emotions she was working very hard not to examine too closely. Then the media found out. It happened fast. One photograph taken outside the clinic. Jason helping Cynthia with her coat. His hand on her arm in a gesture that looked intimate even though it was just practical. The photographer sold it to a tabloid that ran it with the headline "Billionaire's Secret Baby Mama." Within 48 hours, Cynthia's quiet life exploded. Photographers appeared outside her apartment. Camped in vans and on sidewalks with long lenses pointed at her windows. Reporters called Magnolia and Vine asking for comments. Her social media, which she rarely used, was flooded with friend requests from strangers and messages from journalists offering money for interviews. She called Jason in a panic. "They found me. They are outside my apartment. I cannot leave without being photographed. What do I do?" "Stay inside." His voice was calm. Commanding. "I am handling this." "Handling it how?" "I am coming over. And I am bringing security. Give me 30 minutes. He arrived in 25. With two large men in dark suits who positioned themselves outside her building and made the photographers retreat to a more respectful distance. Jason himself came up to her apartment, the first time he had been inside her space since everything fell apart. He looked around at the small studio she had made into a home. The baby corner with its yellow walls. The second-hand furniture she had assembled herself. The life she had built without him. "This is nice." He said it quietly. "It feels like you. It feels like what I could afford." She crossed her arms. "Which is apparently of interest to every tabloid in the country." "I am sorry." He turned to face her. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. What I told you I could not protect you from. You said you could not protect me from it." She threw his own words back at him. "I did not think that meant you would drag me into it anyway." "That is fair." He did not defend himself. "You are right to be angry. I should have been more careful. Should have anticipated that someone would eventually connect us. What do we do now?" "We make a statement." Jason sat down on her second-hand couch without asking permission. "A joint statement, if you are willing. Acknowledging the pregnancy. Asking for privacy. Getting ahead of the story before the tabloids invent a narrative we cannot control." "I did not want this." The words came out sharper than she intended. "I did not want to be a story. I just wanted to have my baby and live my life." "I know. This is exactly what you said would happen. The scrutiny. The chaos. This is why you left." He was quiet for a long moment. The security team's presence outside was audible through her thin walls. Footsteps. Low voices. The machinery of wealth protecting something that had been perfectly fine unprotected until he reappeared. "You are right," he finally said. "This is exactly what I said would happen. But Cynthia, here is what I understand now that I did not understand then. I said I could not protect you from this life. But I never said I would stand beside you through it. I tried to remove myself from the equation instead of fighting for what we had. And now. Now I am here. Saying that I will stand beside you. Through this and everything else. Not because I think I can protect you from the scrutiny. But because facing it together is better than you facing it alone." She wanted to argue. To point out that she had been facing everything alone for 8 months and doing fine. That she did not need him or his security team or his joint statements. But the truth was more complicated than that. The truth was that the photographers outside her window terrified her. The truth was that she had no idea how to navigate a world where her private pain became public entertainment. The truth was that maybe, just maybe, she did not have to do this alone anymore. "Okay." She said it quietly. "We make a statement." Jason's publicist drafted something that night. Cynthia approved it with minor revisions. The next morning, Jason posted it to his social media accounts that had millions of followers. "I want to address recent speculation about my personal life. I am expecting a child with someone I care about deeply. I ask that the media respect our privacy during this time. Any further statements will come directly from me, not from tabloid speculation." It was not romantic. Did not claim they were together or reconciling. But it acknowledged her. Claimed the baby publicly. Put his name and his reputation on the line in a way that could not be taken back. The photographers retreated within a day. Apparently Billionaire confirms pregnancy was less interesting than Billionaire hides pregnant mistress. The story faded from headlines within a week. But something had changed. Not just in the public narrative. In Cynthia's perception of who Jason was becoming. He had chosen her. Publicly. Put his name beside hers when it would have been easier to stay silent. Accepted the consequences of that choice without complaint. It was one moment. One decision. But it cracked something in the wall she had built around her heart. 2 weeks later, they were sitting in her apartment after an appointment. Jason had taken to coming inside now, helping her up the stairs when her back hurt, making tea while she put her feet up. Small domestic intimacies that had crept in without either of them acknowledging what they meant. I have been thinking. Jason handed her a cup of chamomile. About how to make this work long term. The back and forth from here to San Francisco is not sustainable if I want to be a real presence in her life. What are you suggesting? I am not sure yet. But I am exploring options. Ways to spend more time in Portland without abandoning my responsibilities in California. It might take a few months to restructure things. But I want you to know I am working on it. Cynthia studied his profile as he sat down across from her. Looking for signs of impulsiveness or naive romanticism. But he seemed serious. Thoughtful. Like someone making a carefully considered decision rather than a grand gesture. Do not upend your life for us. I am not appending my life. He met her eyes. I am restructuring it around what actually matters. There is a difference. For 8 years I prioritized work over everything else. Built an empire. But I was completely alone in it. That is not success. That is just expensive loneliness. I do not want to do that anymore. People do not change overnight, Jason. Trust me, I have learned that lesson. You are right. They do not. But people can change gradually. Intentionally. If they are willing to do the work. I am willing. I just need you to give me time to prove it. She wanted to argue. To point out all the ways this could fail. To protect herself and the baby from potential disappointment. But watching him sit in her small apartment, drinking tea from a mug she had gotten at a thrift store, looking more comfortable than he probably ever had in his penthouse, she found herself wanting to believe him. The weeks turned into months. The small moments accumulated. Jason was at every appointment. Called every night to check in on how she was feeling. Sent groceries when she mentioned she was too tired to shop. Never overstepped. Never pushed. Just showed up consistently in ways that slowly rewrote her understanding of who he was. 8 months pregnant became 9. The baby was coming soon. The nursery was ready. The hospital bag was packed. Everything was as prepared as it could be for something that could not truly be prepared for. And then Jason made an announcement that changed everything. He appeared at her door on a Sunday afternoon with an expression that suggested he had news he was nervous to share. Can I come in? I have something to tell you. She stepped aside. Let him into the space that had become familiar to both of them over the past 4 months. I closed on a house yesterday. He said it without preamble. Here in Portland. 20 minutes from your apartment. 4 bedrooms. Good schools nearby. A yard. You bought a house. I am moving here. He rushed on before she could react. I have been restructuring my company. Delegating more responsibilities. Opening a Portland satellite office. I can run most operations remotely. The things that require my physical presence in San Francisco, I can handle with occasional trips. But my home base will be here. Where you are. Where she will be. Jason. I know it seems like a lot. He held up his hands. I know you said not to upend my life. But this is not appending. This is rebuilding. In the right place. For the right reasons. I want to be here for every moment I can. Every first step. Every first word. Every ordinary Tuesday when nothing happens but I get to be her father anyway. She did not know what to say. Had prepared herself for his interest to fade as the novelty wore off. Had expected him to find excuses for why he could not be as present as he promised. Instead he had restructured his entire life. Moved across state lines. Chosen ordinary proximity over extraordinary distance. The baby kicked, hard, as if registering her own opinion on the matter. Let me see the house. Cynthia heard herself say. Before the baby comes. I want to know where my daughter will be spending time. The house was exactly what she would have chosen if she had unlimited resources and the ability to design a home for a child. Craftsman style. Warm wood and large windows. A kitchen that opened to a backyard perfect for summer afternoons. 3 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, one of which was already being painted a soft yellow. This will be her room. Jason led her into the space. When she is old enough for overnights. If you approve. Cynthia stood in the doorway of what would become her daughter's 2nd bedroom. The walls were half painted. Drop cloths covered the hardwood floors. A can of the same yellow she had used in her own nursery sat open by the window. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. "About the yellow?" "I asked Elena." Jason admitted. "She told me what color you chose for your place. I wanted her rooms to match. So she would feel like both spaces belonged to her. It was such a small detail. Such a thoughtful consideration. The kind of thing that required effort and attention and care." She started crying. Could not help it. The hormones and the exhaustion and the overwhelming reality of what he was doing all combined into tears she could not stop. "Is this okay?" Jason looked panicked. "Did I do something wrong? I can change the color if you hate it. Or cancel the whole thing if it is too much. Just tell me what you need. I need you to stop being perfect." The words came out choked. "I need you to give me a reason not to trust this. Because trusting it terrifies me and you keep making it harder to protect myself." He crossed the room carefully. Stopped at arm's length. Close enough to touch but waiting for permission. "I am not perfect," he said quietly. "I am someone who made a terrible mistake and is trying very hard to do better. The reason you cannot find a reason not to trust this is because I am genuinely committed to earning back what I threw away. That is not a trick. That is just the truth." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. Tried to compose herself. Failed. "I am scared," she admitted. "Of wanting this. Of believing in it. Of letting you in and having you leave again. I know." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he took her hand. "I know I destroyed your trust. I know sorry does not begin to cover it. But I am not asking you to forgive me. I am not asking for another chance with you romantically. I am just asking for the opportunity to be a father to our daughter. To prove myself through actions. Day after day. Until the evidence outweighs the fear. And if the fear never goes away, then I keep showing up anyway." He squeezed her hand gently. "For as long as it takes. I am not going anywhere." Something cracked in her then. Not broke. But cracked. In the way ice does when spring comes. Making room for something new to emerge. "Okay." She said it on an exhale. "Okay." They stood in a half-painted room while dust motes floated in the afternoon light. Two people who had been shattered by each other, trying to build something different from the wreckage. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Now I need to pause here because we have reached another turning point. Jason has moved to Portland. Bought a house. Restructured his entire life to be present for a daughter who is not even born yet. And Cynthia is standing in that yellow room, holding his hand, letting herself hope for the first time in 8 months. But here is what neither of them knows yet. The real test is coming. The moment that will prove whether Jason's transformation is genuine or just another performance. If you are invested in finding out what happens, if you need to know whether Cynthia's walls will finally come down, I need you to do something right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that consistency matters more than grand gestures. That trust is rebuilt through accumulated evidence, not single moments of clarity. And stay with me. Because the proving is not over. The crisis that will test everything Jason has built is right around the corner. The weeks that followed felt like watching someone build a house in real time. Each day Jason laid another brick. Each week the structure became more solid. Each month, the foundation grew stronger. He moved into the Portland house 3 weeks before Cynthia's due date. Did not pressure her to visit. Did not expect her to be part of his life there. But he sent photos of the progress. The furniture being delivered. The nursery being completed. The backyard where he was learning to maintain a garden because he wanted their daughter to know where food came from. He showed up for the small things. Grocery runs when she mentioned she was out of milk. Assembly of baby gear that arrived in boxes with instructions written in 4 languages. Practice runs to the hospital so they would know exactly how long the drive took and which entrance to use. He showed up for the hard things too. The night she called at 2 in the morning because she could not sleep and the anxiety was overwhelming. The afternoon when her back seized up so badly she could not stand and he came over and helped her to the couch and stayed until the pain passed. The argument they had about parenting philosophies that ended with both of them frustrated but neither of them walking away. That was the difference she kept noticing. He stayed. Even when it was difficult. Even when she was not at her best. Even when the easy thing would have been to retreat into his wealth and his resources and his ability to make problems disappear. He stayed. The pattern began to rewrite something in her nervous system. Some deep programming that had been running since she watched her mother die and her father abandon her for a new life in Arizona. The program that said people leave. People always leave. Do not trust anyone to stay because staying is not what people do. But Jason was staying. Day after day. Week after week. Proving through accumulated evidence what his words could never prove alone. The labor started at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. Cynthia woke to a contraction that felt different from the Braxton Hicks she had been experiencing for weeks. Sharper. More insistent. The kind of pain that demanded attention. She timed the contractions for an hour before accepting that this was real. They were coming 8 minutes apart. Consistent. Progressive. The baby was coming. Her hand reached for her phone automatically. She did not think about who to call. Did not debate between options. Just dialed the number that had become as familiar as her own. Jason answered on the first ring. Cynthia. His voice was alert despite the hour. What is wrong? I am in labor. Silence for 1 second. 2. Then the sound of movement. Sheets rustling. Feet hitting the floor. I am on my way. Do not move. Time the contractions. I will be there in 12 minutes. He made it in 10. He had clearly thrown on whatever clothes were closest. Sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt. Hair sticking up in every direction. But his eyes were focused. His presence was calm. He moved through her apartment with efficiency, grabbing the hospital bag she had packed weeks ago, helping her down the stairs, opening the car door with one hand while supporting her with the other. The drive to the hospital took 15 minutes. He talked to her the entire time. Not about anything important. Just words to fill the silence between contractions. Stories about the garden he was trying to grow. Updates on the neighbors he was meeting. The small details of a life he was building in preparation for this moment. She was grateful for the distraction. Grateful not to be alone in a car driving herself to the hospital the way she had imagined so many times. Grateful that when she reached for a hand during a particularly strong contraction, there was a hand to reach for. They arrived at the hospital at 3 in the morning. The admission process was smooth. Jason had called ahead during the drive, alerting the staff that they were coming. A wheelchair was waiting at the entrance. Forms were already started. Someone took the bag and someone else guided them to a room, and suddenly Cynthia was in a hospital bed with monitors strapped to her belly and machines beeping around her. You are doing great. Jason stood beside her bed, still holding her hand. Whatever you need, I am here. The labor was long. 18 hours of contractions that built an intensity until she was certain her body was trying to tear itself apart. Jason stayed for all of it. Held her hand through the worst of it. Fed her ice chips when she was allowed nothing else. Told her terrible jokes that made her want to throw things at him but also somehow helped. At hour 12, there was a complication. The baby's heart rate dropped. Alarms sounded. Nurses rushed in with expressions that suggested professional concern masking underlying worry. We need to monitor this closely. The attending physician explained what was happening in terms that made medical sense but emotional terror. There may be cord compression. If the heart rate does not stabilize, we will need to discuss intervention options. Jason's face went pale. She watched him absorb the information, watched him process the possibility that something could be wrong with their daughter. What do we do? He asked the doctor. What do I do? You stay calm. The doctor was already adjusting Cynthia's position, trying different angles to relieve whatever pressure might be causing the problem. You keep her relaxed. Stress makes everything worse. Jason turned to Cynthia. Took both her hands in his. Hey. He said it softly. Look at me. She met his eyes. Saw her own fear reflected there but also something else. Determination. Resolve. The kind of strength that existed for someone else's benefit rather than its own. She is going to be okay. He said it with a certainty he could not possibly feel. We are going to meet our daughter today. This is just a small complication and these doctors are the best in the city and everything is going to be fine. How do you know? I do not. He admitted. But I am choosing to believe it anyway. And I am going to stay right here, holding your hands, until we get to hold her together. The monitor beeped. The baby's heart rate stabilized. The doctor exhaled in visible relief. Good. She is coming back up. Position change helped. Let us keep watching, but I think we are okay. The rest of the labor progressed without incident. But something had shifted in those few minutes of fear. Cynthia had watched Jason face the possibility of losing a daughter he had only just been allowed to claim, and he had not run. Had not made excuses. Had not retreated into the emotional distance that had characterized their original relationship. He had stayed. Stayed and held her hands and chosen to believe in a positive outcome when everything in him must have been screaming to prepare for the worst. At 8:47 in the evening, 18 hours after labor began, Luna Marie Reyes Gutierrez entered the world. She was screaming. Red-faced and furious at being evicted from the only home she had ever known. Absolutely perfect. The nurses placed her on Cynthia's chest. Warm weight and tiny fingers and a cry that quieted the moment she heard her mother's heartbeat. "Hi baby." Cynthia could barely speak through the tears. "Hi Luna. I have been waiting so long to meet you." Jason stood beside the bed, his own tears streaming freely. His hand reached out slowly, trembling, touching Luna's back with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious experiences. "She is real," he whispered. "She is actually real. She has your eyes." Cynthia looked up at him. "Same shape. Same darkness." "She has your chin," he countered. "Same stubbornness already. I can tell." They laughed. Both of them. Through tears and exhaustion and the overwhelming reality of becoming parents together. The nurses eventually took Luna for measurements and tests. Cynthia was moved to a recovery room. Jason stayed. Of course he stayed. He had been staying for 4 months. Staying was what he did now. They were alone in the dim room, Luna in her hospital bassinet, both parents too wired to sleep despite the exhaustion that weighed on them like physical force. "I need to tell you something." Cynthia said it into the quiet. Jason looked at her. Patient. Ready for whatever she needed to say. "I think I am ready." The words came slowly, each one a step across a bridge she had been afraid to walk. To try again. Not to forget what happened. "I will never forget that. But to build something new. Different. Better." The expression that crossed his face was worth every moment of pain she had endured. Wonder and hope and gratitude all mixed together into something that made him look younger than his years. "I will not let you down." He said it like a vow. "Either of you. I promise." "Do not promise me tonight." She echoed her words from their first conversation after the restaurant. "Promise me every day. With actions. Every day." He agreed. "For the rest of my life." He kissed her then. Soft and careful. The first kiss since everything fell apart. It tasted like tears and exhaustion and the beginning of something neither of them had expected to find again. Luna made a small sound in her bassinet. A tiny noise of contentment that suggested even at only a few hours old, she approved of what was happening between her parents. They broke apart, both of them looking at their daughter with matching expressions of wonder. "We made that." Jason said it with awe. "We made a whole person." "We did." Cynthia reached out to touch Luna's cheek. "And now we get to figure out how to keep her alive." "That does sound terrifying when you put it that way." "Welcome to parenthood." He laughed. She laughed. Luna slept through it all, peaceful in the way only newborns could be, unaware of the complicated history that had led to this moment. And in that hospital room, with machines still beeping and nurses still checking vitals and the world still turning outside windows that showed the city lights, something was born alongside Luna. Not just a baby. A family. Imperfect. Rebuilt from wreckage. But real. The first weeks at home were a blur. Luna operated on a schedule that seemed designed to ensure neither parent ever slept for more than 3 hours at a stretch. Feeding and changing and soothing became the only activities that mattered. Everything else fell away in the face of keeping one tiny human alive. Jason moved into Cynthia's apartment. Not officially. Not with any conversation about what it meant. He just stayed. First one night because Luna would not stop crying and they took shifts walking her around the living room. Then another night because Cynthia was too exhausted to do anything alone. Then a week because at that point sleeping at his own house seemed pointless when he would just drive back at 2 in the morning anyway. They learned to parent together. Not through philosophical discussions but through 3 in the morning necessity. He figured out that Luna liked being bounced in a specific rhythm. She figured out the exact swaddle technique that helped Luna sleep. Together they discovered that car rides were magical and white noise machines were essential and sometimes babies just cried and there was nothing you could do except hold them and wait. It was exhausting. Overwhelming. The hardest thing either of them had ever done. But underneath the exhaustion was something else. Connection. Partnership. The kind of bond that formed when two people faced impossible circumstances together and chose to keep showing up. 1 month in, Cynthia woke to find Jason in the nursery at 4 in the morning. Luna was asleep in his arms. He was sitting in the rocking chair, just watching her, his expression soft in a way she had never seen on his face before. She went back to bed without disturbing them. But she lay awake for a long time, thinking about the man Jason had become. Thinking about the walls she had built and whether they were still necessary. Thinking about what it might mean to fully trust someone again. 2 months in, they had their first real fight since Luna's birth. It was about something stupid. Whether to use the sleep training method suggested by one book or the gentler approach suggested by another. They were both running on no sleep and maximum stress, and suddenly they were yelling at each other in the kitchen while Luna screamed in the other room. "This is exactly why I built my life to not need anyone," Cynthia shouted. "Because needing people means conflict and conflict means pain, and I was doing fine before you came back." "You were surviving," Jason countered. "Surviving is not the same as living. Maybe surviving is better than this. Maybe I was right to keep everyone out." They stared at each other across the kitchen. Both breathing hard. Both aware they were standing on the edge of something that could go very wrong. Then Luna's crying shifted into something more urgent. And without discussion, without resolving anything, they both moved toward the nursery. Because whatever was happening between them, Luna needed attention first. They calmed her together. Tag-teaming the process they had developed over 2 months. And by the time she was settled, the anger had faded into something else. "I do not know how to do this," Cynthia admitted into the quiet. "Fighting and staying. In my experience, fighting is what happens before people leave." "I am not leaving." Jason said it simply. "We had a fight. We will have more fights. That is what happens in relationships. But fights do not mean endings. They mean we care enough to disagree. What if I do not know how to fight and stay at the same time? Then we learn together." He reached for her hand. "I am not going anywhere. Even when you are yelling at me. Even when I am wrong. Even when everything is hard. I am here." She let him take her hand. Let herself believe, just a little, that maybe he meant it. 3 months in, something shifted. It was not dramatic. Not a single moment of clarity. Just an accumulation of small things that finally reached a tipping point. She noticed that she had stopped waiting for him to fail. Stopped bracing for the moment he would decide this was too hard and disappear. Stopped keeping one foot out the door in case she needed to escape. She noticed that she reached for him automatically when something good happened. Wanted to share Luna's first real smile with him. Wanted him to see the way their daughter's eyes tracked faces now. Wanted him to be part of every moment. She noticed that when she imagined the future, he was in it. Not as a co-parent on the periphery but as a partner at the center. Someone she built a life with instead of just alongside. Elena noticed it too. "You are in love with him," she said it matter-of-factly during a rare lunch break at the restaurant. Again. Still. Whatever the right word is. Cynthia did not deny it. "Yeah," she admitted. "I think I am." "Does that scare you?" "Terrifies me." "Good." Elena nodded like this made perfect sense. The things worth having usually do. That night, after Luna was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Cynthia found Jason in the living room reading one of the parenting books he had accumulated over the past months. "Can we talk?" He set the book aside immediately. "Of course." She sat down beside him on the couch. Close enough that their shoulders touched. Close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I have been thinking." She started slowly, finding her way through words she had never expected to say. "About us. About what this is. About what I want it to be." He waited. Patient. Giving her space to find her meaning. "When you came back, I gave you one chance. One chance to be a father. I did not expect anything more than that. Did not want anything more. I was so focused on protecting myself that I could not imagine letting you be anything other than a co-parent. That is understandable. But you have been more than that." She met his eyes. "Every day for 4 months. You have been here in ways I did not know I needed. You have held me through the hard parts and celebrated the good parts and showed up even when I made it difficult. I will always show up. I believe you." She said it simply. "Finally. For the first time since you came back, I actually believe you." The smile that spread across his face was everything she had not known she was waiting for. "What does that mean?" he asked carefully. "For us. It means I want to try. Really try. Not just co-parenting. Not just sharing a baby. A relationship. You and me. Together. He kissed her before she finished the sentence. Pulled her close and kissed her like they had both been waiting for this moment for longer than they wanted to admit. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against hers. I love you. He said it like a confession. I have loved you for 4 months. I have loved you since before I was smart enough to know what that meant. I should have said it a long time ago. I love you too. She whispered it back. Again. Still. Whatever the right word is. Luna chose that moment to cry from the other room. They broke apart, laughing at the timing that seemed to be their daughter's specialty. Duty calls. Jason stood up. Wait. Cynthia caught his hand. We are okay. Right. This is real. He looked at her. At the woman who had survived his abandonment and built herself back up and given him a second chance he did not deserve. At the mother of his child. At the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life proving himself worthy of. This is real. He confirmed. As real as anything I have ever known. They went to tend to their daughter together. As they had been doing. As they would continue to do. Two people who had found their way back to each other through pain and patience and the terrifying choice to believe that different was possible. Luna settled quickly. She was getting better at soothing herself. Learning the rhythms of life with parents who were learning their own rhythms at the same time. When she was asleep again, they stood over her bassinet together. Watching her breathe. Marveling at the person they had made. We did okay. Jason whispered. Did we not? We did better than okay. Cynthia leaned into him. We did real. And in the quiet of the nursery, with their daughter sleeping peacefully and their future stretching out ahead of them, they let themselves believe that some things were worth the risk. That some people could change. That some love stories got second chances. And that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe was not cruel but kind. Putting people exactly where they needed to be exactly when they needed to be there. All because of one word spoken in a private dining room. Yours. Now I need you to stay with me for the final part of this story. Because what happens next, the life that Cynthia and Jason build together, the lessons their journey teaches us about love and trust and second chances, that is coming in the conclusion. But before we get there, I need you to do something. If this story has moved you, if you believe in the possibility of redemption, if you are rooting for this family that has fought so hard to exist, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you think about second chances. Do people deserve them? Can trust really be rebuilt? Is Cynthia right to let Jason back in? Your voice matters to this community. And trust me, you do not want to miss how this story ends. 2 years passed in the way time does when you are building something real. Not in dramatic leaps but in ordinary accumulations. First steps and first words. Sleepless nights that slowly transformed into full nights of rest. The chaos of infancy settling into the rhythm of toddlerhood. Luna grew into a person with opinions and preferences and a personality that seemed to combine the best and most challenging parts of both her parents. She had Jason's analytical mind, approaching puzzles and problems with a focus that seemed impossible for someone so small. She had Cynthia's stubbornness, refusing to give up on tasks until she had mastered them or exhausted everyone around her in the attempt. She also had her own qualities that belonged to no one but herself. A laugh that could fill an entire room. A tendency to narrate everything she did in a running commentary that her parents found either adorable or exhausting depending on how much sleep they had gotten. A fierce attachment to a stuffed elephant named Peanut that went everywhere she went. Jason and Cynthia moved in together officially 6 months after Luna was born. Not to his house. Not to her apartment. To a new place that belonged to both of them. A craftsman bungalow in a neighborhood full of young families and good schools and the kind of tree-lined streets that made you believe in the existence of ordinary happiness. They bought the house together. Her name on the deed alongside his. Not because she needed the legal protection but because he wanted her to know that everything he had was shared now. No separate assets. No escape routes. Just two people building one life. The first year in the new house was hard. Combining 2 lives into one space required negotiations neither of them had expected. Where to put the furniture. How to organize the kitchen. Whether Luna's toys should be confined to her room or allowed to colonize the entire house. They argued about small things and discovered that small arguments did not have to become big problems. They learned to apologize quickly and forgive quickly and move forward instead of keeping score. They figured out the rhythm of partnership, when to push and when to yield and when to simply laugh at the absurdity of two adults fighting about proper dish organization. They also learned to be happy. Not the breathless happiness of new love but the deeper satisfaction of chosen commitment. The happiness that came from waking up next to the same person every morning and choosing them again. From building rituals and traditions and inside jokes that no one else would understand. Sunday morning pancakes became a tradition. Luna would help mix the batter, making a mess that took longer to clean than the actual cooking. Jason would flip the pancakes with varying degrees of success. Cynthia would pretend to be horrified by their technique while secretly loving every moment. Friday nights became date nights. Elena would come over to babysit, and Jason and Cynthia would go somewhere that did not require cutting anyone's food into small pieces or negotiating bathroom breaks. Sometimes they went to fancy restaurants. Sometimes they just drove around and talked in the car like teenagers who did not want to go home. They had hard conversations too. About the past and how it still affected them. About fears that crept in at unexpected moments. About what they wanted for Luna and what they wanted for themselves and how to build a future that honored both. One night, almost a year after they moved in together, they were sitting on the back porch after Luna was asleep. The summer air was warm and heavy with the smell of jasmine from the neighbor's garden. "Do you ever think about what would have happened?" Cynthia asked into the quiet. "If I had told you about the pregnancy that night. Before you left." Jason was quiet for a long moment. The question was not accusatory. Just curious. The kind of wondering that came from a place of security rather than pain. "I think about it sometimes," he finally said. "I think I would have stayed. Physically anyway. But I am not sure I would have been the father Luna deserves." "What do you mean?" "I was not ready then. To be a parent. To be a partner. I was still running from everything that scared me. Still choosing easy over meaningful. If you had told me and I had stayed, I would have resented the responsibility eventually. Would have looked for exits even while standing in the middle of our life together. So you think it happened the way it needed to happen?" "I think it happened the way it happened." He took her hand. "I do not believe in fate or destiny. I believe in choices. I made terrible choices 8 years ago. Then I got a chance to make different ones. I chose differently. That is all any of us can do. Do you regret it? The time you missed? Every day." His voice was thick. "I missed her first heartbeat on an ultrasound. I missed feeling her kick. I missed her birth and her first cry and her first everything for the first 7 months of her life. I will regret that until the day I die. But I cannot change it. All I can do is be present for everything that comes next. Every first and every ordinary moment in between. I am not going to waste time grieving what I missed when I could be showing up for what is happening now." Cynthia leaned into him. Let his arm wrap around her shoulders. Let herself feel the solidity of his presence and believe, finally and completely, that it would last. "I forgive you." She said it simply. Into the summer darkness. "I forgave you a long time ago. But I do not think I ever said it out loud." She felt him exhale. A release of tension she had not known he was carrying. "Thank you." He whispered it against her hair. "I do not deserve it. But thank you. Forgiveness is not about deserving." She pulled back to look at him. "It is about letting go. I was so angry for so long. Angry at you for leaving. Angry at myself for trusting you. Angry at the universe for making love so complicated. The anger was exhausting. It was keeping me prisoner even after I thought I had moved on. And now I am free." She smiled at him. "Free to love you without the weight of what you did wrong. Free to trust you without waiting for you to fail. Free to build a life with you instead of just surviving beside you." They sat in the quiet together. Two people who had hurt each other and healed each other and chosen each other despite having every reason not to. "I love you." Jason said it like he said it every day. Not because it was routine but because it was true. "I love you too," Cynthia replied. Still. Again. Always. Luna's voice came from the baby monitor. A sleepy call for water. For reassurance. For the presence of parents who would always come when she called. They went inside together. Tended to their daughter together. Returned to a bed they shared with the comfort of people who had stopped being surprised by their own happiness. The restaurant happened almost by accident. Cynthia had stopped talking about opening her own place after Luna was born. Not because she did not want it anymore but because the logistics seemed impossible. Starting a restaurant required capital she did not have and time she could not spare and risk she was not willing to take when she had a child depending on her. But Jason had been paying attention. Through all the late-night conversations and half-mentioned dreams and wistful looks at vacant storefronts. He knew what she wanted even when she had stopped letting herself want it. For their second anniversary of being officially together, he did not give her jewelry or plan an elaborate trip. He gave her a business plan. What is this? She opened the folder to find projections and market analysis and location options laid out with the precision of someone who built companies for a living. It is your restaurant. He said it carefully. Not a gift. Not me buying it for you. A proposal. A partnership. You provide the vision and the talent and the execution. I provide the initial capital as an investor with a minority stake. You pay me back over time or buy me out entirely once you are profitable. Your name on the door. Your decisions. Your dream. She stared at the papers in her hands. At the spreadsheets that made her impossible dream look mathematically achievable. Jason. You have been taking care of Luna and taking care of me and taking care of everyone except yourself for 2 years. He moved closer. You put your dreams on hold because you thought you had to choose between being a mother and being an artist. But you do not have to choose. You can be both. You deserve to be both. I cannot let you fund my business. Why not? Because it is too much. Because if it fails, I will owe you. Because I spent so long building something that did not depend on anyone else. I know. He took her hands. I know you built your life to not need anyone. I know accepting help feels like weakness. But Cynthia, this is not charity. This is investment. I have seen you create things that make people cry with joy. I have watched you turn flour and butter into art. I believe in your talent as a business proposition, not just as your partner. Let me invest in something I know will succeed. She looked at the business plan again. At the projected timeline and the startup costs and the revenue models that made her dream look like more than fantasy. I would have complete control. Complete creative control. We would negotiate the business structure together. But yes. Your menu. Your staff. Your vision. I would be a silent investor. Nothing more. And if it fails, then it fails. Businesses fail sometimes. That is the risk of creating anything. But you would not owe me anything beyond the standard loan terms. We would restructure the debt. Figure it out. Move forward. Failure does not end us. She wanted to say no. Wanted to maintain the independence she had fought so hard to build. But she also wanted to say yes. Wanted to finally chase the dream she had been carrying since her mother's bakery closed and she promised herself she would have her own place someday. I need to think about it. Take all the time you need. She thought about it for 2 weeks. Talked to Elena about the risks and rewards. Consulted with lawyers to make sure the agreement protected her interests. Examined her own fears and asked herself whether they were protecting her or holding her prisoner. In the end, she said yes. Cypress and Vine opened 18 months later in a converted warehouse space that Cynthia had walked past 100 times and never let herself imagine owning. The renovation took 6 months. The menu development took another 4. The staffing and soft openings and endless adjustments took the rest. But when the doors finally opened to the public, it was everything she had dreamed and more. The restaurant was small by design. 40 seats maximum. An open kitchen where diners could watch their food being created. A pastry counter that showcased the desserts that had always been Cynthia's first love. Local ingredients featured prominently. The menu changed with the seasons. The reviews came quickly. First local blogs, then food magazines, then national publications that called Cypress and Vine a destination worth traveling for. The waiting list grew to 3 months. The recognition grew to include award nominations and industry accolades. But what mattered most to Cynthia was not the fame or the success. It was the creation itself. Walking into her own kitchen every morning. Leading a team that trusted her vision. Making food that brought people joy in the same way her mother's food had brought joy 3 decades earlier. She had done it. Built the thing she had been dreaming about since she was 8 years old and small enough to stand on a step stool and watch her mother roll out croissant dough. Her mother would have been proud. She felt it in her bones. Felt the presence of someone she had lost too young watching over everything she created. Luna turned 3 the same month Cypress and Vine won its first major award. They celebrated both occasions with a party at the restaurant after closing. Staff and friends and the small circle of people who had become family over the years. Jason gave a toast that made Cynthia cry and Elena pretend she had something in her eye. Luna ate too much cake and fell asleep in a booth before the party was over. It was a perfect night. The kind of night that made every hard thing that came before worth enduring. Later, after the cleanup and the drive home and the careful transfer of a sleeping toddler from car seat to bed, Cynthia and Jason stood in their kitchen drinking tea. "I cannot believe this is my life." Cynthia said it softly. Looking around at the house they had built together. Thinking about the restaurant that bore her name. Remembering the woman she had been 3 years ago, pregnant and alone and certain that needing anyone was a weakness she could not afford. "You earned this life." Jason replied. "Every single piece of it. We earned it." She corrected. "I could not have done this without you. Not the restaurant. Not any of it. You made this possible." "No." He shook his head. "I helped. I invested. But you made it possible. You had the vision and the talent and the work ethic. I just provided some resources that made the timeline shorter. The achievement is yours." She thought about arguing. About insisting that his support mattered more than he was acknowledging. But she also recognized the truth in what he was saying. She had built this. With help, yes. With partnership, certainly. But the core of it, the creation itself, that was hers. "Can I tell you something?" Jason set down his tea. "Always. I have been thinking about what my life looked like before you came back into it. Before the restaurant. Before Luna. Before everything that matters now. I had money and success and everything the world tells you should make you happy. And I was completely empty. What changed? You." He said it simply. "Luna. Learning that my life was missing something essential and then having the chance to find it. I do not mean that in a romantic movie way. I mean that literally. I was hollow. Going through the motions of living without actually being alive. And then you gave me a second chance I did not deserve, and suddenly there was substance to my days. I did not give you anything. You earned it. I know. But you let me earn it. That is not nothing. A lot of people would have refused. Would have kept me away completely and been justified in doing so. You took a risk on the possibility that I had changed. That risk made everything else possible." She thought about the woman she had been that night in the parking lot. Hurt and angry and so certain that protecting herself was the same as protecting her daughter. She had almost said no. Almost refused to let him try. Almost kept him away completely because the alternative felt too dangerous. "I was scared." She admitted. "When I said I would give you one chance. I was not being generous. I was being practical. I thought you would fail and at least Luna would know I had tried to include you." "What changed your mind?" "You did. Every day you showed up. Every promise you kept. You made believing in you easier than doubting you. That does not sound romantic but it is true. The evidence accumulated until I could not ignore it anymore. I am glad you could not ignore it." "Me too." They stood in their kitchen, two people who had survived each other and then saved each other and then built something beautiful together. Not a fairy tale. Not a romance novel. Something messier and more real and infinitely more valuable because it had been earned through years of choosing each other when choosing was hard. The final lesson came from Luna herself. She was 4 years old and asking questions about everything. Where rain came from. Why the sky was blue. Whether dogs dreamed. The endless curiosity of childhood demanding answers to questions that adults had stopped asking. One morning over pancakes, she asked a different kind of question. "Mama. Why do you and Daddy live together?" Cynthia set down her spatula. Considered how to answer a question that seemed simple but contained multitudes. "Because we love each other," she said. "But Tommy's mama and daddy do not live together and his mama says she loves his daddy." Luna's face scrunched in confusion. Tommy was her best friend from preschool, whose parents had divorced the previous year. "That is true." Cynthia sat down at the table. Giving this conversation the attention it deserved. Some people who love each other do not live together. Love comes in different forms. "Then why do you live together?" "Because we chose to." Jason spoke up from where he was loading the dishwasher. "Your mama and I decided that we wanted to build a life together. To be a family with you. So we made that choice and we keep making it every day. You have to choose every day. We have to choose every day." He confirmed. Love is not just a feeling. It is a decision. We decide to be kind to each other. We decide to work through problems instead of giving up. We decide that being together is more important than being right or being comfortable. What if you decide you do not want to live together anymore? Then we would have to make different choices. Cynthia said honestly. But right now, we choose this. We choose each other and we choose you and we choose our family. Luna considered this with the seriousness of a 4-year-old processing big concepts. I am glad you choose each other. She finally said. I like our family. We like it too, baby. Luna returned to her pancakes, the question apparently resolved to her satisfaction. But Cynthia and Jason exchanged a look over her head. The kind of look that contained an entire conversation without words. They had chosen this. We're choosing it. Would keep choosing it for as long as choosing was possible. That was not a guarantee. Not a promise that nothing would ever go wrong. But it was something more sustainable than guarantees. It was intention. Daily, deliberate intention to build a life together instead of apart. Later that week, Cynthia found herself at a foundation event. One of those charity galas that Jason's business connections occasionally required them to attend. She wore a dress that made her feel powerful. He wore a suit that made him look like the billionaire he technically still was despite having restructured his life around things that mattered more than money. They stood near the back of the room, watching Luna charm potential donors with stories about her stuffed elephant and her preschool and the purple castle she was building in the backyard. She is going to be trouble. Jason observed. In the best possible way. She already is trouble. Cynthia smiled. Have you seen the way she negotiates bedtime? She has inherited your business instincts. And your stubbornness. Do not forget the stubbornness. A photographer approached, asking if they would pose for a picture. The kind of society page documentation that had once filled Cynthia with dread but now felt merely routine. They posed together. Smiled on command. Performed the small ritual of being photographed as a family. When the photographer moved on, Jason took her hand. Can I ask you something? Always. Are you happy? She considered the question. Not reflexively but genuinely. Checking in with herself the way she had learned to do over years of therapy and self-examination. Yes. She said it with the certainty of someone who had learned the difference between happiness and contentment. Between joy and merely surviving. I am happy. Good. Are you? I am. He squeezed her hand. I spent so many years chasing things that could not make me happy. Money. Success. The approval of people who did not actually matter. And then I found you. Found Luna. Found a reason to stop running and start building. I am happier than I knew I was capable of being. That is a good thing to be. It is. Luna ran over then, demanding attention in the way 4-year-olds did. They left the gala early because bedtime was non-negotiable and also because neither of them really wanted to be there anyway. The drive home was full of Luna's chatter about the fancy dresses she had seen and the tiny sandwiches she had eaten and the man who had given her a business card even though she could not read it. They tucked her in together. Read her a story together. Stood in her doorway together watching her drift toward sleep. I love you. Cynthia said it quietly. Not wanting to wake Luna but needing to say it anyway. I love you too. Jason replied. Still. Again. Always. They went to bed in the house they had built together. Fell asleep in each other's arms the way they had done for 3 years now. Woke up the next morning and chose each other again. As they would keep doing. For as long as they were given. Now let me speak directly to you because we have reached the end of this story. And I need you to understand something important about what you have just witnessed. This was not a fairy tale. Cynthia and Jason did not get a happy ending because the universe owed them one. They got a happy ending because they worked for it. Because Cynthia was brave enough to give a second chance she had every right to refuse. Because Jason was committed enough to earn that second chance through years of consistent action. Because both of them were willing to be vulnerable when vulnerability felt like weakness. There are lessons in this story that I want you to carry with you. Not as rules for how to live but as possibilities for how things can be. The first lesson is this. Actions matter more than words. Jason told Cynthia he had changed. Told her he would be different. Told her everything she needed to hear to trust him again. But his words were worthless. They had always been worthless. What earned her trust was not what he said but what he did. Showing up for every appointment. Moving to Portland. Staying through the hard nights. Choosing her and Luna over his empire every single time the choice was presented. If someone has hurt you, their apology means nothing until their behavior changes. If you have hurt someone, your promises mean nothing until your actions prove them true. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. The second lesson is this. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. When Jason left, Cynthia could have decided that his abandonment defined her value. Could have believed that she was disposable because he had disposed of her. But she did not. She built a life that proved her worth to herself. She achieved things that had nothing to do with him. She became complete on her own terms. No one else gets to decide what you are worth. Not the person who left you. Not the person who hurt you. Not the world that tells you that you should have been enough to make them stay. You determine your value through your choices and your actions and the life you build. The third lesson is this. People can change, but proof is required. Jason was not the same man at the end of this story that he was at the beginning. He transformed from a coward who ran from commitment into a partner who showed up every day. That transformation was real. But Cynthia was right not to believe in it until she saw the evidence. Was right to demand proof instead of promises. Was right to let trust be rebuilt slowly through accumulated moments rather than single gestures. If someone tells you they have changed, you have the right to require proof. Not because you are being cruel but because trust is precious and should be earned. If someone is not willing to prove their transformation through consistent action, they have not really transformed at all. The fourth lesson is this. Survival is the foundation, but thriving is the goal. Cynthia spent 7 months in survival mode. She was proud of herself for surviving, and she should have been. But she also learned that surviving was not the same as living. That contentment was not the same as happiness. That protecting yourself from pain also protected you from joy. If you are in survival mode right now, stay there as long as you need to. Build your walls. Guard your heart. Do what you need to do to make it through. But know that survival is a phase, not a destination. When you are ready, when you have healed enough to risk again, the walls can come down. The heart can open. Thriving is possible even after devastation. The fifth lesson is this. Second chances are responsibilities, not gifts. When Cynthia gave Jason a second chance, she was not doing him a favor. She was giving him an opportunity to prove that he deserved what he was asking for. And Jason understood this. He treated his second chance as a responsibility. Something to be honored through daily commitment rather than celebrated and then forgotten. If someone gives you a second chance, treat it like the precious thing it is. Do not take it for granted. Do not assume that the hard work is over because you have been forgiven. Prove every day that you deserve what you have been given. And if you are the one giving the second chance, know that you have the right to revoke it at any time. Second chances are conditional on continued proof. The sixth and final lesson is this. Love is a choice, not just a feeling. Cynthia and Jason fell in love through chemistry and attraction and the mysterious forces that draw people together. But they stayed in love through choice. Through deciding every day to be kind to each other. Through working through problems instead of giving up. Through choosing their family over their individual comfort. Feelings fade. Attraction waxes and wanes. The breathless excitement of new love cannot be sustained forever. But the choice to love can be sustained. The decision to show up, to be present, to build something together. That is not a feeling. That is an action. And actions can last forever if you keep making them. So that is the story. Cynthia and Jason and Luna. 3 people who became a family through circumstances that could easily have torn them apart. One word in a private dining room that changed everything. Yours. One word that meant everything and nothing at the same time. A question and an answer. A fear and a hope. The acknowledgement of a connection that could not be denied even when both of them wanted to deny it. They are still together now. Still choosing each other. Still building a life that neither of them expected but both of them needed. Luna is 5 years old and asking more questions every day. About where she came from. About why her parents did not always live together. About the complicated history that brought her into being. They answer honestly, in age-appropriate ways. Teaching her that families come in different forms. That mistakes can be recovered from. That love is worth fighting for. Cynthia's restaurant is thriving. 3 years of success and no signs of slowing down. She has expanded the pastry program, hired more staff, started a catering division that brings her food to events across the city. Her mother's legacy lives on in every dish she creates. Jason has restructured his company entirely. Works remotely most days. Attends board meetings via video call. Prioritizes being present for his daughter over being present in conference rooms. His business partners have adjusted. His revenue has not suffered. He has proven that success does not require sacrifice of everything else. They are not perfect. No one is perfect. They still argue about small things and occasionally about big things. They still have moments of doubt and fear and the lingering echoes of old pain. They still do the work that all relationships require. But they do it together. And together makes everything easier. So here is what I need from you now. If this story meant something to you, if it made you think about your own life and your own relationships and your own capacity for forgiveness or change, I need you to do something with that feeling. Hit the like button right now. Not because I am asking you to, but because engagement is how this story reaches the people who need to hear it. Someone out there is standing in a parking lot right now, deciding whether to give someone a second chance. Someone out there is trying to prove they have changed and wondering if it matters. Someone out there needs to know that survival is possible and thriving is possible and love can be rebuilt even after it has been shattered. Share this video with them. Send it to the person in your life who is struggling with trust or forgiveness or the question of whether people can really change. This story might not be about them, but the lessons in it might be exactly what they need to hear. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Mr. Dawson Stories is not just about entertainment. It is about exploring the messy, complicated reality of human relationships. About finding truth in fiction. About believing that our worst moments do not have to define our entire lives. Drop a comment below telling me your thoughts. Do you believe in second chances? Have you ever given one? Have you ever received one? What would you have done in Cynthia's position? What would you have done in Jason's? Your voice matters. Your story matters. This community we are building together is about all of us, not just the characters in these videos. And remember this. Every single day, you have the choice to do things differently. To be better than you were yesterday. To show up for the people who matter. To build something meaningful instead of just getting through. That choice is yours. It has always been yours. Make it count. This has been Mr. Dawson Stories reminding you that the best love stories are not the ones where everything is perfect. They are the ones where imperfect people choose each other anyway. Where trust is rebuilt through accumulated evidence. Where second chances become lifetimes. One word can change everything. What will your word be? Until next time. The story continues. But not here. In your life. In your choices. In the way you decide to show up for the people you love. Go show up. And if this story moved you, remember to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because the next story might be the one that changes everything for you. See you soon.